On this episode of AV Week, the AV we need to get back to the work, back to the office, and back to performances, security of the AV network, and coding versus configuring. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 545, recorded Friday, January 28th, 2022. Coding is dead.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sennheiser. For over 75 years, Sennheiser has been a leader in pro audio and is now offering a wide variety of touchless and traditional audio solutions for both corporate and educational campus-wide audio.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have got this week, first and foremost, Charmaine Torella. I can't roll my R's, but she can. She's from Varix. How are you, ma'am?
Hello, sir. I'm from Varix, and it's Torella.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Erin Mayer Moran, we'll talk about her in a second, but she's here from Johns Hopkins. She's not a doctor, but she's smart enough to be one. How are you, ma'am?
Doing good. Glad to be here, Tim.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Jared Hellman from Hellman AV from Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is the birthplace of most of the best hockey players in the world. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Awesome. We're recording this on Friday, the 28th. If my team is listening to this, technically I took the day off, which is why I'm wearing a Blues jersey. If you're watching the video, if you're not watching the video, I'm wearing a tuxedo and you don't know. But we are still in the midst of the AVNation Reader's Choice Awards. By the time you're listening to this on Monday, you still have technically a couple of days to finish out here, or at least one day to finish out, because Monday is the 31st. And Ms. Mayer Moran is a finalist for the AVNation AV Tweets Award. So she's going up against a formidable opponent in one Ms. Lex Peters. So just vote your conscience. I'm not going to tell you which way to go. Her being on today has nothing to do with that. We talked about this a month ago. So there you go. All right. First story actually comes to us from an old friend of ours. Mr. Steve Greenblatt writes for our friends over AV Network, talking about the quote-unquote no coding solutions within the AV industry. Interesting the fact that Mr. Greenblatt wrote this because Steve works or owns an independent programming house. But Steve goes into talking about the reason that it's in quotes is the no coding, according to Steve, can be a misleading term, quote unquote, providing a false sense of security that anyone can create an application regardless of their understanding or skill level. No coding does not equate to no knowledge, no understanding, or no effort. The need to conceptualize and define a blueprint for what is being developed is still a requirement, and understanding the logic and thought process of programming is still a prerequisite to maximize the effectiveness of no coding solutions. Charmaine, I'm going to take a left turn on this, and I'll probably get a call from Steve on Monday, which is fine. I understand his premise. I understand the piece that he wrote here. He's right. You do need the logic. You do need the process. However, are we getting to a point where coding is kind of dead in the industry? And when I say coding, understand what I was never a coder, right? Control is still my favorite part of the AV industry. I love it to death. I love what Control Concepts and Steve and the guys and gals do there. But I'm talking about sitting down and writing lines of code in the industry. Are we past that?
It's shifting. That's the best answer to give it to you. So it's not like it's going away, but it's shifting from that type of coding where you're doing, like you said, sitting down and writing lines and lines, and every time you add something, another set of lines and making sure it's correct. It's shifting away from that because the industry is shifting away from those types of integrations where it requires that type of coding. But there is a level of coding that's being factored in with the soft solutions that are coming in, but it's not the same coding that AV is used to. right? It's not the same coding with the Crestron, the AMXs. It's different now, which is asking for a different type of skill set that you have to still understand the previous, but now you have to factor in the other things like JSON and HTML. That has to be now factored. That's never been really factored in before, but we really have to get hip to it. So it's not gonna go away, but it is shifting into something else. And it still will be around for some complex rooms and systems, but there's going to be more volume in the area that it's shifting towards. I hope that makes sense. I see Aaron's like, yep.
Well, yeah, Aaron, jump in here, because as a tech manager and somebody who manages, several hundreds of rooms on a university, this is an area that you guys kind of pay attention to on both sides. Not only do you pay a lot of times either independent programmers or through the integrators, but a lot of your fellow HETMA members will also have on-site integrators, in-house integrators, but also in-house programmers. So are we? Yeah. So are we? Are we there yet?
I appreciate that a lot of these systems are becoming more configurable versus programming, or full-on programming. But as a control system programmer myself, it's not going anywhere. But Charmaine's right. It's a shift. They're moving away a bit from the dedicated languages that were used previously, and now they're moving more towards the same sort of languages that are used on web pages and in other IT applications. So it's going to be, I feel like, a bit more universal and usable for other applications, and become more robust in allowing certain like database polls and things like that for much more complicated system designs.
All right, Mr. Hillman, the last word on this, as somebody who you design and maintain, but also you're the owner of the company, so you've got a different kind of stake in this. Where are we at when it comes to this, and when you start looking for the next, I don't want to say generation, but your next programmer or your next IT AV tech, is this something, is the fact that they need to know JSON and HTML5 more important than maybe AMX coding?
So I'll try to speak within my knowledge framework, which is hard as an owner and a sales person, because usually we talk out of that bubble maybe more than we should. So I'll try to contain myself here, but I think Aaron hit the nail on the head with saying configurable. And configurable programming has been around for a while, what I would have called, pick and pluck, or like block diagram programming before. And it's always worked really well, pending you use everything within that ecosystem that's available within that configuration. And by saying, what I mean by that is, you know the configuration software, and you know that it only provides modules for this device, this display device, and this amplifier, and this speaker set, and this DSP, and that's what you stay with it. It was almost like a fixed architecture. So as long as you stay within that ecosystem, configurable programming works really well. I don't think advanced programming, as I would see it, is going anywhere, because there's just not enough synergy yet across protocol, or not protocol wouldn't be the right word, but across the industry. So when you get into a boardroom, let's take Crestron for example, or Extron has a good example as well. Can you make a video conferencing room with your basic AV equipment work with configuration? Sure. But now tie in the HVAC and the lights and the shades, to which you have no idea what the brand is or what language it needs to communicate in. And that's where you have to open up to that advanced programming. So I don't think it's going anywhere, but I do really like how Steve's article says it's misleading, because I see users see that and they go, well, if I can program this myself, well then Heather at the front desk, she could program this, couldn't she? Like, couldn't I have her do it? Or Ted on our IT team, I mean, he's a network guy. He should be able to do this. And so I do agree it is misleading, but I don't think it's going anywhere.
Why do you got to hate on Heather at the front desk? I mean, seriously, that was just.
Well, and she's the lifesaver too, to be honest.
I thought Canadians were nice. I'm just saying. I mean, that was just. You are right. No, that is the one thing. And it's funny is Jared, you mentioned before we go to the next story here. You mentioned that a lot of these a lot of the robustness of some of these kind of configurable systems are based on the available modules that are available that people make. Well, Steve's company does. That's what Steve's company does, right? That is.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next story comes to us from our friends over at Commercial Integrator. TD SYNNEX has launched a cybersecurity training program. I find this very fascinating. TD SYNNEX, obviously a combination of two pretty good-sized distributors. One of the things that distributors have done over the last 10 years to kind of an added benefit or a benefit to their clients, which is, folks like Charmaine and Jared primarily, is providing, engineering services, design services, programming services, but also some of these added education. And one thing that they're doing is they're kind of boning up and helping their dealers and their customers increase their cybersecurity skills. According to the article here, quote unquote, this aims to reduce the cybersecurity skills gap through its placement and upskill initiatives that are designed to place candidates by providing sources and technical skills needed to succeed and grow in cybersecurity. Aaron, I'm going to start with you on this, mainly because you live and breathe in one of the most security needed environments, and that is not only does she work for a university, so you've got the student side of secure and securing that information, but Johns Hopkins, if you've never heard of it, also happens to be a hospital. So we've got the healthcare side of this. Aaron, when you look at and you have conversations with integrators and you have conversations with your connections there, how important is their companies and their technicians and their network folks having either certifications or at least working knowledge of security? How important is that before they come on campus and start messing with your network?
It's extremely important. For the most part, I mean, we're lucky that as a large institute, we have a whole department that are available, and this is their specialty and what they focus on, and kind of guide us to where we need to be. I think smaller businesses and schools may not be as fortunate, but it is so important that anybody who is planning on putting anything on our network, they're aware of what the implications could be. And we make sure that, our AV vendors, that we play kind of the middleman between us and networking to make sure that all the steps that are, need to be followed to even get something connected in and get an IP address and everything. But we, as in higher ed, we recognize that, it's such an important thing that everybody be educated about, that for our HETMA conference coming up, this is the topic of one of our sessions, and we thought it was important that, we talk about it as a part of the industry.
Real quickly about well, I want to promote that in a second, but when you guys start looking at that session, like who do you have talking, and is there a checklist? Is there a, hey, you've got these certs, or hey, you've got these people? Like what is it that how are you fleshing out the dealers and the integrators and the partners there, before you start giving them, designs or requests for proposals or anything like that?
Yeah, it's basically, we look to see where they're at certification wise, and there are some checklists that we want to make sure we see, or even the if things are not a piece of equipment that we have vetted previously, we need to make sure that we know all the specifications of it to make sure that we're not putting something that could be vulnerable on our system.
Jared, I kind of asked you, the programming question when you hire your next programmer. The same thing here, right? When you start looking at the security of not only your business's network but also the systems you're putting in place, what is it that you guys can do as an integrator to make sure that your folks have the latest greatest knowledge base, but also are kept up to date on the latest vulnerabilities?
I think a working knowledge is probably the base requirement for any AV integrator now. And I don't know that becoming a cybersecurity expert as an AV integrator is really required or needed or a smart move, because I think if you've made that move to becoming a cybersecurity expert, you're more likely starting on the IT side and perhaps incorporating AV into your IT company rather than being an AV integrator incorporating IT into your firm. But I think a working knowledge, like Aaron said, so that the AV pro can sit at a table with the IT department or the IT expert and have an understanding of what's being discussed. And like she mentioned, if you're putting devices on the network, you can identify where there may be some risk and kind of communicate that. But so I had read the article again just while you guys were talking because I wanted to see, and I like that they're saying it's just to reduce the cybersecurity skills gap. So I don't think they are saying you're going to leave as a certified cybersecurity expert, but it's to fill that gap, and I think that's great.
Well, and let's be clear, there are several levels. I was having coffee this morning with a buddy of mine, who there's a gentleman that he's a part of a kind of a mind meld group, or I don't know, it was mind. Anyhow, he has coffee with a bunch of business people once a week, and there's a gentleman there who he works for a financial institution here in St. Louis, and he is getting ready to get the highest level cybersecurity. Now, what we're talking about here is like the Cisco version of the CCNP on steroids, right? So that's what this. So we're not saying TD SYNNEX is offering that. I'm not saying that that's what folks need, right? So if you're like the highest level, you can play Tetris on the government computer and nobody will scream at you. But at least having that knowledge. Charmaine, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. First of all, you can handle it, but we've been talking about this. And the fact that AV is IT and IT is AV is IT, and we've had that conversation on AV in the AM, on this show, and other places. God love Frank Patakala. He's carried that banner well. Is it time to at least start looking at a CTS version of this, right? I'm not saying security, cybersecurity, but at least networking, where we say, you know what, there are skill gaps. There are things that the industry is not necessarily preparing technicians for, or we're expecting them to kind of go outside CCNA, right? Or, BICSI or other types of certification. Is it time that we kind of bring some of these networking skills and start baking them into our existing classes and training schedules?
Yes, God, yes, thank you, amen. Yes, it is time to start doing that. But what it's also time to start doing, so yes, do we need to know more about this side of the tech business of cybersecurity and network? Absolutely. The products and solutions, we went to, talked about no coding solutions. Again, the shift. Remember the end of year podcast we did, and we said what's coming, and I said what does all these changes in AV mean? It means, and I said that this industry is transforming. There's a metamorphosis that needs to happen, right? And this is part of that metamorphosis that needs to happen so we can evolve and get past this plateau that we've been in for some time. So yes, it's needed, that type of training, one. The second thing that's needed is we have to start recruiting people into the AV industry that already have the skill set. As I tell people many times before, it's easier to train IT into AV instead of backwards. Training it the other way is hard. It's difficult. It's a totally different, it's easier to learn to learn the AV component, to learn the IT component, the network component. That's a little more difficult to take an AV person and say, okay, here. It's not that easy. So we have to start this metamorphosis and really, dive into it. And yes, have more of those trainings that talk to that network and cybersecurity and understanding, but also have the resources, recruit them in our industry that can help augment and complement what we're doing to help make that shift and that, transformation much easier for a lot of these companies, because it is not easy. It is hard. I've seen companies say that, yeah, we're doing it, and it's hurt them in a lot of ways. So yes, is the overall answer.
Y'all should listen to her, because that is where she came. She started in IT and telecom, right? And Charmaine has successfully made that transition, so she knows what she's talking about coming this way. So, and I've failed the CCNA at least twice. I think I stopped taking it about 5 years ago. So, anyhow. It's a whole nother story. I also failed the CTSD, but that's a different conversation. I tried taking it during Infocom one year, and it was a late night, and my test was like at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not going to comment on that. Last story here comes to us. Joe Way was not involved in that one, but someone else was, who will remain nameless, because I don't want to drag him into it. Sennheiser, actually, this one comes to us from our website, AVNation.tv. Sennheiser's digital 6000 wireless microphone system helps Cirque du Soleil come back to work after an unfortunate hiatus. I'll give you two guesses what the hiatus was from, and it wasn't because they were on vacation. It was COVID, obviously. So as folks get back into performances, as folks get back into work, as folks get back into the office, what are we looking at here? How are we able to take what was left behind and augment it, and what are we putting in, and what are customers asking for? Jared, we'll start with you on this. When you look at getting back to work, what are some of the challenges of getting those designs done and getting them installed in a timely manner to make sure that your customers are ready to go back to the office?
So I was on a webinar a couple of days ago, and it was all about IT collaboration and conferencing. And one of the topics they brought up was really interesting to me, was that as everyone returns to come back to prepares to come back to the office, and they have these plans that everyone is going to be working on Zoom or Teams and whatnot. And they're going to have all these rooms now powering Zoom or Teams and video conferencing, and everyone at their desk is going to be able to conference. And what they're probably going to be in for a surprise is actually the bandwidth of the current network that they have, and how well it can actually support bringing back 80% of their office, because the video portion isn't going away. People aren't going to come back to the office, and companies take a hit in their video conferencing platforms. It's not going to happen. So the one thing I would say companies should be prepared for is to really think about, when they start opening their office back up, how are they preparing everyone to come back and manage all of that increased demand on their network? Because it's going to, we're back in the office and we conference between offices. Just because you're working on something, you want to screen share, you just give them a quick call, and so that's demand, right? The second part is, if you don't know what you're doing when you get back to the office or when you open it up, you need to figure it out really fast, and then you need to order all that stuff, because all that equipment that you want that's going to make your return to the office easier and more successful is probably 4 to 6 months away in some instances. And so I'll leave it to you guys which direction you want to go on the topic, but those are two big things I would say. Get your product on order and figure out your bandwidth.
All right, Charmaine, same kind of question is as you're talking to clients getting back to the office, and as I'm asking this, I'll kind of clarify a couple of things. Erin works for Johns Hopkins, so she's going to comment on not only what they're doing for back to classes, but also in their offices here in St. Louis. St. Louis is an interesting market. If you're not familiar, we have the Mississippi going down the middle of us, and so on one side of the river is Illinois, completely separate political structure, completely separate state. On the St. Louis side, you've got Missouri. drastically different when it comes to the political side, but also, you've also got different municipalities and different things like that. CTI, the company that my day job, we are I'm going to say 90% remote. Basically, anybody that doesn't have to be in the office, we're asking them not to be. Meaning that techs and our rack builders, they're physically in the warehouse, but anybody else, you're encouraged to work from home. But some of our clients are 100%. Like they're getting back to the work, the office 3 days a week, 4 days a week. Some of them are even 100% back. So Charmaine, as you're looking at this and talking to your clients, what are some of those challenges of getting, as Jared said, getting gear 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, sometimes longer than that? And how do you communicate that?
What a question. Another curveball for me. So the first thing is, and I'm in New York City, right? So different beast entirely. So with New York City clients and Northeast, because I don't just do New York City, most of the Northeast are clientele, and some of California for me. So getting back into the office, the hard part is your equipment's been sitting in sleep mode practically, right, for about a year and a half, where in that time, manufacturers and some updates in firmware has already floated out. Those devices probably don't have the latest or the version that's needed, and you have to double check that. So that's problem number one that, I'm talking to my clients about in setting their expectations. Just because you didn't use the system doesn't mean you can just come back in, turn it on, and it's ready to go. It doesn't work that way. You have to think about, okay, does this have the right firmware upgrade? And if not, we need to get this on. We need to do a preventative maintenance visit or system diagnostic check, because there's something in a year and a half, we might have to add some things to this device and update firmware. That's number one. Set expectation. It is not, you can't just turn something, it's anything, any device in your home. You just can't turn it off, especially if you have a smart device, and think, oh yeah, I'll turn it back on in 2 years and it'll work as it did before. That never happens. So same thing with your AV system. So you have to prepare for that. Clients are doing a good job here in the Northeast of preparing for that. They've been listening to me all last year, probably got tired of listening to me, but that was the key, keep talking, and they have done it. So now they're in a better place. The other thing is, yes, they want to exercise some flexibility, which makes that Sennheiser solution really interesting, because that's exactly what it's doing. So they want more devices that are a little more plug and play, and now they're in a state of reevaluation. So a lot of the clients are in that reevaluating state, and I'm pushing them there because, okay, we know there might be a slight reopening. We don't know to what percent. Some clients say 20, 30, 40, 50 in the first quarter, maybe less. And then depending on what other variant comes out of the, woodworks, it might, I know.
No more variants.
No more variants. But just in case. Our clients are definitely protective of, they have to protect, their opportunity to earn and get back to business, and really try to push towards that way. So reevaluating what's in their space. A lot of clients are doing that right now. And with that reevaluation, they're looking at the kind of equipment like the solution that Sennheiser came up with to get Cirque du Soleil back into operation, because again, you're shipping equipment here, and then you have to set it up all over again. And the way logistics is, not just getting equipment, but the way logistics is a problem still, right? It's going to take a lot more time. So that's, basically where the clients are. That's what we have to keep doing with the clients. We're in a state of reevaluating, having that hybrid solution in play just in case. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm tossing the ball again to Aaron, for higher ed and healthcare, especially because I have a few of those clients. I mean, I can't even speak on that. So I guess that's something Aaron absolutely can go in deep and talk about.
No. And I was going to say that when I took a look at the Sennheiser article, the part that really jumped out at me was basically the last part when it was about support, because that is the part that we really have to deal with the most. We made adjustments to classrooms to allow for all the different scenarios that they kept coming up with. And that's all fine and good, but it's the supporting of it all that was really what we needed to work on the most. But you were absolutely, when you talked, Charmaine, when you talked about updating equipment and being firmware revisions behind, that was something that we really had to take some time to get back up to speed with, because the classroom sat there unused for not as long as some schools, but it was long enough that when we came back in, so many things just weren't quite right and needed kind of a little bit of a reboot, refresh, update that firmware, and got everything up and running. But it really, we would have been nowhere these last 2 semesters if it wasn't for the support staff between our students, all right, and our the regular staff members to keep all of this stuff running and keep the instructors moving along and teaching their classes.
Are we not going to talk about Ice Ice Baby being
I know,
Aaron's
that's
ringtone?
exactly what that was. Yeah.
And I always have my phone muted. I don't know why it was not.
That may have been my favorite thing that has happened in 10 years. Mine is the Harry Potter theme, so I'll go ahead and punk myself out there too. So really quickly, as we wrap up here, I'm just going to ask this general question, either to Charmaine and Jared or to Aaron. There have been manufacturers who have punted and pushed their delivery dates because it's one thing and it's another, and for the vast majority of them, God love them, they are doing what in my opinion, this is my opinion, this is not anybody else's opinion, this is Tim Albright's. They're at least doing what I would say is the right thing by their dealers and their clients by saying, if you get your order in first, you're going to get your product first, right? They're being very careful about getting sold out of stuff, right? Because we all know the big 2, 3, 4, 5 companies could probably come in and write a check and buy all of the, Samsung displays in the world, right? But they're not being allowed to do that. However, sometimes those delivery dates are getting pushed farther than what maybe they thought they were originally. Either for the 2 integrators on this or you, Aaron, how are we getting that information? How are we communicating that? And is it staying consistent, I guess, is the best way to put that.
Aaron, let me take a stab at this and you can answer on the client side. I think this applies to every last one of us on this call. What was the last point? How are we setting those expectations?
How are we taking the information we're getting from the manufacturers, even as it's changing? Because it is changing.
It is.
How do we communicate that to the client successfully without it sounding like we're making crap up? Because let's be frank here. Seriously, if you're the client, right? Again, 100 years ago, I was a tech manager, right? Mm-hmm. And Charmaine, if you're my salesperson and you tell me, okay, Tim, you're going to be able to install this at the end of January, I'm like, okay, I'm going to block off rooms. I'm going to do the thing. And if you tell me a week before, just kidding, it's the end of February now, or it's the end of March now, I'll be with you once or twice maybe, but the third time,
Yeah, well, that happened to me this week. So definitely can answer. That happened. And basically a client is like, well, you're so bad like Michael Jackson. Like, why can't you mitigate this? Literally. It's like they gave me that you're bad like Michael Jackson type of thing.
You are. I get, yes, you are.
Not as bad as Michael Jackson, believe me. But the way, you have to, it's a collaboration between, of course, your project delivery team and, of course, the account management team, right? You have to keep a watch on the shift. Unfortunately, what's happening right now is some manufacturers, more than others, are not giving us realistic expectations and dates. And because some manufacturers, and I absolutely will not name a name, is basically very nonchalant and cavalier in thinking that they're the only game and solution there is, but that's not the case. This is like we've been in this mode and cycle of shift, and the customer is yelling and barking at me saying, aren't you Michael Jackson? Aren't you bad? Be bad. And I'm like, okay. So then I have to tell the manufacturer, hey, listen, I'm going to be bad for my client and now I'm going to redesign and re-engineer it with someone else. And that's what's going to start happening now. And that's the offer that I have to give to the clients. Once I lay down, okay, this happened again and it's shifting, here's the manufacturers that aren't doing this as much, or it's reasonable. Can we shift to this now? Here's another solution. Let's look at this and give it a try. Because that's kind of where I had to go. It's just, you have no option now. And so what that means to those cavalier, nonchalant manufacturers that think they're the best game in town is they're losing market share. And they're going to continue losing market share. And,
Can I just...
Yeah.
I just want to add to that because 4 months ago, maybe even 2 months ago, it didn't really matter what manufacturer you went with, because we would get this from clients and they would say, well, can't we find a substitute? Can't we find an alternate? And we would say, in the beginning, November, I would say ish, we tried. We would try to source a different amplifier, different DSP, different whatever we could find, and no one had anything. But what we're finding is that towards the end of December and opening into January, exactly what Charmaine said. Now the successful manufacturers are going to be the ones that can deliver, specifically when they say they can deliver, and more so the sooner they can deliver. And now you're starting to see that spread in who has what, because even for ourselves, again, not naming, we have a major client that we've consistently done the same control system for. And when that control system hardware was not available, we actually learned another control system platform because we could get that sooner. And so we, like Charmaine said, and I don't think they're oblivious to this, but what Charmaine said is market share will be redistributed based on who can deliver when they say they're going to and who can deliver soonest. And that'll be really interesting too.
Well, Aaron, I'm going to give you the last word on this. As the client that is writing the check, how important is this? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting position because we see ourselves as an end user, but also we're an in-house integrator. So not being able to get the products in is difficult, and we've had to change our whole game plan for summer because we have only specific times where we can do installations. We can't just be like, oh, it's going to come in the middle of March. Okay, so we'll just, block off some time then. We've got classes then. So we have distinct times we have to use. So to get around the fact that we don't know if equipment is going to land for the summer window, we're taking we're shifting some of our refresh cycle rooms. We're going to put them off a semester or potentially two. We have some rooms that need stuff so bad that we are taking some equipment from other rooms that had been refreshed and just reusing it temporarily, because we can't depend on this stuff to land.
Good night. All right. I do hope, and I will be sending this episode around to some manufacturer friends of mine, because there's some things that you can't do. I get it. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But honesty, transparency is incredibly important. And yes, there is going to be some unfortunate redistribution of market share that are outside of your control. It's how we rebound and how we come out of this, I think, is going to be the big.
And Tim, I'm sending you a Forbes article that says no more excuses because of COVID, and I'm sharing that with you so you could share that with them too, because that's what customers are saying. And make sure you have it.
The other thing that I think is going to be really interesting too that we're seeing is payment terms and how that's shifting. Because if I submit and this is what we've had to start looking at our payment terms as well with clients, because if I've submitted an order in October and typical timeline before that was 4 to 8 weeks, floating a PO for that entire time until a project was complete, say within 3 months, 3 to 4 months, that wasn't really a problem on cash flow. But when you're submitting a PO order from a client in October and half of it shows up by the end of December and the other half's not coming till the end of April, but you're being billed for the first half and you haven't billed the client anything. So I'd be interested to see what other integration firms and other manufacturers are doing to adjust with those payment terms, because it is going to start putting a strain on, we're a smaller integration firm and we can manage ourselves, but we still have to, like every business, you have to watch that cash flow. And so when you have stuff trickling in and the bills trickling in, meanwhile, the client is sitting back on a PO, I think that's another interesting conversation is payment terms and how is that?
It is a very interesting conversation, not one for here, but it's a fascinating one because you just here's the thing. The next round of acquisitions and closures will 100% lay the feet at the feet of that right there.
That
right.
Could be interesting.
It is this length of jobs not getting done, and businesses who are not necessarily, let's say, financially on their right foot, then they're going to get kind of in a bad spot.
They'll get buried they'll put themselves in a bubble and they won't be able to wait until that payday comes. No.
All right, y'all. That will do it for us. On that happy note, Charmaine Terrell from Verix. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
How do people connect with you in Verix?
You can connect with me on Twitter and on LinkedIn as my first and last name, Charmaine Bovea. You could say Torella for American purposes. And it's, if you want to reach out to me, it's ctorella@verix.com. You can call me Charmaine, I'm bad, Torella, because that's what I'm at right now.
She is bad. Aaron, very nice to have you on a regular version of AVWeek. I indoctrinated Aaron into AVWeek at Infocom, and I put her between two of my dearest friends, Dave Labuscus and Mike Blackman, and she did fantastic with the two of those yahoos.
Go girl!
Yes. Yeah, she was awesome. They're a couple of knuckleheads, but she was awesome. But my Dave is the CEO of Avixa. Mike is the managing director of ISE. So, how do people connect with you? And if somebody is a tech manager and they want to connect with and get involved with HATMA and the conference you got coming up, how do they do that?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn at Aaron Marmoran, and you can find me on Twitter at Smearin_off_ice. And you can find more information about HATMA and our upcoming conference on our website, HATMA.org, HETMA.org.
All right, very good. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Hillman, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
How do people connect with you or Hillman AV?
So you can visit Hillman AV website at hillmanav.com, which is HILLMANAV.com. Or the best place to find me online these days is LinkedIn, which is just my first and last name.
And Jared doesn't want me to promote his fantastic podcast that he has with Mark Coxon, so I'm not going to mention it. But if you go to your favorite place to find podcasts and you type in either Mark Coxon or Jared Hillman, you will find a fantastic podcast.
And we are working on a return. We just have some planning to do.
They're on hiatus. They're taking a sabbatical. So there you go.
The band broke up for a bit, but we're getting back together.
Well, good. That is awesome. For Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find programs like this and a host of others. There's another podcast actually I did with Aaron about a year ago So you can check that out. You can check out our residential version of this called AVWeek. Matt Scott hosts that. He's the only other Canadian that is allowed on not really. I mean, for crying out loud, a week ago I had Brock. So check that out. And by the time you hear this, I believe we're doing this on Tuesday, and Mitchell can tell me I'm wrong, but I believe it's Tuesday. Matt and I will be doing a live broadcast and revealing the AVNation awards. So I'm sure we'll put a link to that somewhere, or somebody that does my social now will say that somewhere. I don't know. But yeah, Matt and I will be unveiling that. I believe we're doing that live. So check all that out, and check out the folks who help us and make this possible, our fantastic sponsors. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.